It was the 15th of April, 1945. In the cold, mud-churned waters of the River Oder's eastern bank, near the German town of Coastline, the 8th Guards Army of the Soviet First Belarusian Front faced its final major obstacle before Berlin. The Oder was the last great natural barrier. On the western shore, less than 60 kilometers from the capital of the Third Reich, lay the Silo Heights. The Soviet High Command knew the heights were fortified, manned by the weary but determined remnants of the German Ninth Army. But there was a more immediate, more perplexing problem directly before them. It sat in the middle of the Oder's floodplain, a squat, concrete island in a sea of reeds and marsh. Its official designation was Werk Oderbruch, part of the Festungsfront Oderwarth-Bogen, the Oderwarth Bunker Line. The German soldiers called it Die Wasserschloss, the Water Castle. The advancing Soviet scouts simply called it the Bubble. To Marshal Zhukov's staff, examining grainy reconnaissance photographs, it appeared to be a relic, a useless, low-slung coastline fort from a bygone era, seemingly pointed the wrong way, a historical oddity now marooned behind their own lines. They underestimated it completely. The fort was not a relic. It was a singular piece of brutalist engineering, completed in 1938 as a linchpin in Germany's eastern border defenses. Its design was chillingly efficient. From above, it resembled a flattened, angular horseshoe, approximately 100 meters across. Its roof, nearly 2 meters of reinforced concrete, was mounded over with earth and grass, making it virtually invisible from a few hundred meters away. It had no towering superstructure to bombard. Its entire purpose was to be low, to be ignored, and then to kill anything that tried to pass it. Its primary armament was not pointed east, toward the old Polish border. It was pointed north and south, down the length of the Oderbruch floodplain. It was a flanking position designed to enfilade an enemy advancing westward. It contained 6 interconnected machine gun casemates, each with overlapping fields of fire, a central crew quarters, an armory, and a generator room. Its garrison, under the command of Hauptmann Werner Ludke, consisted of 58 men, a mix of veteran pioneer combat engineers from the 25th Panzergrenadier Division, a handful of teenage Volkssturm, and a few fanatical Hitler Youth runners. Inside, the air was a stagnant mix of damp concrete, cordite, and sweat. The only light came from flickering fixtures wired to a coughing diesel generator. On the morning of the 16th of April, the men inside felt, more than heard, the beginning of the Soviet bombardment. It was the opening of Operation Berlin, Zhukov's final offensive. For 45 minutes, the world outside disappeared into a continuous, earthquaking roar. Thousands of Katyusha rockets and heavy howitzer shells churned the Oder's eastern bank into a lunarscape. The concrete around them vibrated like a struck bell. Dust sifted from the ceiling, but inside the Wasserschloss, not a single hair was harmed. Their design had worked. As the barrage lifted at 0500, Ludke, peering through a narrow armored periscope, saw the horizon come alive. It was still dark, but 143 powerful searchlights, a tactical gamble by Zhukov to blind the defenders, lit the smoke and mist into a blinding, surreal fog. Through it, the shapes emerged. The lead elements of the Soviet 8th Guards Army began their advance across the floodplain. They came in waves, infantry on foot, then T-34 tanks of the 11th Guards Tank Corps, trying to navigate the sodden ground and the network of irrigation ditches. Their objective was straightforward: cross the 2 kilometers of open ground, ford the river's main channel, and establish a bridgehead on the western bank. Their maps showed the Bubble as a neutralized point. Their reconnaissance had failed to identify its operational status or its lethal orientation. Ludke waited. He let the first Soviet echelons push past, their attention fixed on the river ahead and the heights beyond. They were now funneling directly into the killing zone his casemates were designed to cover. At a range of 800 meters, he gave the order. The quiet of the floodplain was shattered not by the front, but from the side. From 6 carefully camouflaged slits, the MG-34s and heavier MG-42s in sustained fire mounts opened up. The effect was catastrophic. The machine guns fired at a cyclical rate of over 1,200 rounds per minute. Tracers, 1 in every 5 rounds, cut through the morning mist like solid red lines. From the Soviet perspective, the fire came from nowhere, an invisible scythe cutting diagonally across their advance. The first ranks were mown down where they stood. Supporting tanks, their thinner side armor exposed, were raked with armor-piercing rounds. One's tracks were severed, causing it to slew sideways and block the path of two others. For 30 minutes, the advance of an entire Soviet regiment ground to a bloody halt in the mud. Confused radio reports flooded back to the 8th Guards headquarters. They were taking devastating flanking fire from a concrete island they believed was abandoned. The carefully timed Soviet plan was already unraveling. Zhukov, under immense pressure from Stalin to reach Berlin first, grew furious at the delay. The order came down, neutralized the position immediately. The first Soviet response was direct artillery. A battery of 122 howitzers was turned from the heights to target the fort. Shells began to pound the earth around it, but the angled reinforced concrete deflected all but direct hits on the embrasures, which were too small a target. Inside, the German crew wore ear protection as the concussions rattled their teeth. Dust filled the air, but the guns, manned in shifts, kept firing. Ludk knew artillery alone would not silence them. He anticipated the next move, infantry assault. By mid-morning, a battalion of Soviet guardsmen was detached with specific orders to take the fort. They advanced under covering smoke, using the craters left by their own artillery for cover. They got within 200 meters. Then, from smaller secondary ports, the German defenders used rifle grenades and the few Panzerfausts they had. The shaped charge warheads of the Panzerfausts were devastating against infantry in the open. The assault withered. The Soviets pulled back, leaving dozens of casualties in the reeds. The day wore on. The Wasserschloss became a festering, immovable thorn. It denied the Soviets the use of the most direct crossing points. It forced them to shift their assault forces south, causing massive traffic jams of men and vehicles on the eastern bank, who then became easy targets for German artillery on the Silo heights. A single, underestimated fort, manned by less than 60 men, was disrupting the timetable of an army of over 1 million. As dusk fell on April 16th, the fort remained operational, but Ludk's situation was becoming critical. Ammunition for the machine guns was running low. The generator fuel was nearly exhausted. The Volkssturm men were nearing breaking point from the constant concussions and the claustrophobia, and the Soviets were learning. They would not make the same mistake again.